In a world of billionaires and empires, one family didn't just buy land, they built a country around their name. This is the story of the Grimaldi dynasty, the rulers of Monaco, and how one of the world's smallest nations became a billion-dollar family business. To understand how they came to own it all, you have to go back, not just decades but centuries. In the winter of 1297, a man dressed in the robes of a Franciscan monk knocked on the gates of a small fortress of the Mediterranean coast. The guards let him in. Moments later, he pulled a sword from beneath his robe and opened the gates for his men. That man was Francois Grimaldi, and that fortress was Monaco. From that trick of disguise and a stroke of opportunism, the Grimaldi dynasty began. They weren't kings, not yet. The Grimaldis were a noble Genoese family skilled in war, trade, and survival. What they lacked in sheer military force, they made up for in alliances and strategy. Over the next few centuries, they fought to hold on to the tiny but valuable rock on the sea. It changed hands multiple times, but the Grimaldis returned again and again, weaving themselves deeper into the region's political fabric through shrewd marriages and subtle deals. By the 1600s, the family had earned international recognition. Honore II, who ruled Monaco in the 17th century, declared himself a prince and styled Monaco as a principality rather than a feudal holding. France, then under the rule of Louis XIII, granted recognition of Monaco's independence in exchange for loyalty and alignment with French interests. From then on, the title Prince of Monaco was more than ceremonial. It was a sovereign position, and the Grimaldis held it. But Monaco's independence has always been a delicate arrangement. Though the principality is autonomous, it has long walked a fine line with France. The Franco-Monegasque Treaty of 1861 formally recognized Monaco's sovereignty, while allowing France to defend it militarily. A later agreement in 1918, just after World War I, ensured that Monaco could not act in ways contrary to French interests, quietly binding the fate of this glittering enclave to its much larger neighbor. The result? A country the size of a city block that answers to no parliament, no EU regulations, and no IMF. The Grimaldis still rule as hereditary monarchs, one of the few such dynasties left in Europe with real constitutional authority. They don't govern like ceremonial royals, they run Monaco in a world that traded thrones for ballots. They adapted. They let democracy touch the edges. Elected officials, a national council, but the palace still decides when it matters. Prince Albert II, the current head of state, is both monarch and manager, and he didn't inherit a broken crown. He inherited a family empire built over 700 years of survival, alliances, and careful diplomacy. What began as a trick played by a man in a robe became a dynasty that weathered centuries of revolution, war, and collapse. The Grimaldis outlasted kings, emperors, and dictators, and today they stand as a rare symbol of unbroken royal continuity. Not in a remote castle, but in the middle of a financial capital glittering with yachts, private jets, and tax-free fortunes. But Monaco didn't stay a sleepy coastal fortress. It turned into a financial magnet, and the family made sure they stayed in charge. In the 1800s, Monaco was teetering on the edge of irrelevance. The tiny coastal territory, wedged between France and Italy, had lost most of its land after the towns of Menton and Roquebrune seceded. Its agricultural prospects were poor, and the local economy was barely functional. But then came Prince Charles III, a ruler with a vision not just to survive, but to thrive. Charles III understood something other rulers didn't. If you can't grow food or build factories, you can still sell fantasy. He looked at Monaco's sun-soaked cliffs and saw something other than farmland. He saw profit. In 1863, he authorized the construction of the Monte Carlo Casino, a place of wealth and chance designed to attract the elite of Europe. He gave the exclusive rights to run it to Francois Blanc, a businessman who had already turned a small town in Germany into a gambling destination. Together, they laid the first bricks of a new Monaco. The idea was radical for its time: create a haven for the rich by designing a state around their needs. That meant more than just a casino. It meant building infrastructure for wealth. So Charles III began transforming Monaco's legal system, particularly its tax code. In a bold move, he abolished income tax entirely. Where other nations taxed their citizens to fund the state, Monaco invited the wealthy to keep their fortunes intact, so long as they brought them into the principality. The results were immediate. Nobles, industrialists, and tycoons from across Europe began arriving in Monte Carlo with trunks full of cash and titles. Villas were built, hotels followed, the casino expanded. What was once a rocky outcrop became one of the most valuable stretches of the real estate in the world. And all of it operated under the watchful eyes of the House of Grimaldi, who still held absolute authority. The strategy didn't stop at gambling and taxes. Over time, Monaco was sculpted into a city-state that catered to wealth on every level. Financial secrecy became a feature. Regulations remained light. By the late 20th century, Monaco was a destination not only for aristocrats, but for hedge fund managers, oligarchs, and celebrities looking to park their fortunes or themselves in a jurisdiction that asked few questions and demanded no taxes. Today, over one-third of Monaco's population are millionaires, according to reports by wealth analysts like Wealth Insight and Knight Frank. Real estate prices have soared so high that Monaco consistently ranks as the most expensive place in the world to buy an apartment, averaging $5,000 to $6,000 per square foot. It's not a city, it's a vault with a view. Charles III didn't just revive Monaco, he reinvented it. He designed a kingdom not of peasants and fields, but of penthouses and private accounts. It wasn't built on conquest or industry, but on the seductive promise of total financial freedom. But unlike other monarchs, the Grimaldis didn't just rule, they owned. In Monaco, real estate isn't just an investment, it's a power structure. And at the top of that structure sits the Grimaldi family, not just as rulers of a state, but as landlords of an empire. Most monarchs live in palaces. The Grimaldis own districts, hotels, and entire stretches of coastline, wrapped in marble, guarded by wealth, and connected to a corporate mechanism that blurs the line between royal authority and financial control. The centerpiece of this control is the Société des Bons de Mer, better known as SBM, founded in 1863 under the direction of Prince Charles III, the same ruler who brought the Monte Carlo casino to life. SBM is more than just a company, it's a royal instrument. The firm owns and operates Monte Carlo's most famous properties: the Hôtel de Paris, the Monte Carlo Casino, the Café de Paris, and the Opera di Monte Carlo. Its influence extends from five-star hotels to luxury spas and executive beach clubs. Today, the Monegasque state holds a majority stake in SBM, and the prince, currently Albert II, is the honorary president. This isn't ceremonial. The royal family has real influence over the company's decisions, from strategic expansions to luxury branding. When SBM profits, so does the principality, and by extension, the monarchy. It's a model where economic infrastructure and monarchy are welded together, almost indistinguishably. But the Grimaldi footprint doesn't stop with casinos and hotels. Through direct holdings, state-controlled companies, and a tight network of loyalist developers, the family has extended its reach into residential and commercial real estate, especially in the most coveted zones of Monaco: Monte Carlo, Larvotto, and La Condamine. These aren't just apartments, they're vaults with sea views, often selling for tens of millions of dollars apiece. And in a city where space is more scarce than gold, every square meter is a strategic asset. When Monaco ran out of room to build, the palace didn't shrink its ambition, it extended the country itself. In the 1970s, Monaco launched a bold land reclamation project called Fond Vieille, adding over 20 hectares to the country's footprint. The project included housing, sports complexes, office towers, and a marina, all carved from the Mediterranean. It was expensive, risky, and unprecedented, but it worked. Decades later, they did it again. In 2013, the government greenlit Portier Cove, also known as Mirterra, an ultra-luxurious eco-conscious expansion funded by a consortium of investors, guided closely by the palace. The project will add 6 hectares of artificial land, packed with waterfront villas, high-end residences, a landscape park, and a new marina. The cost over $2 billion. Completion is expected by 2025, but the message is already clear. When Monaco needs more space, the sea is negotiable. This isn't just monarchy, it's a masterclass in sovereign real estate development, a system where the ruler doesn't simply oversee the land, he co-owns it, reshapes it, and sells it back to the global elite at a premium. But ruling a nation of billionaires takes more than land, it takes an image and a marriage. The world paused for a fairy tale, not the kind in books, but one played out in real time. with real royalty and a real Hollywood star. Grace Kelly, an Oscar-winning actress and one of America's most beloved public figures, gave up the silver screen to marry Prince Rainier III of Monaco. It wasn't just a wedding, it was a rebranding campaign, and it would change the future of the principality forever. Grace brought more than beauty and headlines, she brought instant global legitimacy. Monaco, once known for its casinos and tax laws, now had a princess who had acted opposite Cary Grant and Clark Gable. The wedding was broadcast to over 30 million people. In an age before Instagram and viral media, Grace and Rainier made Monaco a place of aspiration, a kingdom of style, mystery, and exclusivity. The effort was immediate and permanent. Grace's presence didn't just elevate the palace, it transformed Monaco's identity. The tiny state was no longer just a place for discreet wealth. It was glamorous. It became the destination of the Riviera. Movie stars, designers, and millionaires followed her lead. The principality's economy, real estate market, and tourism surged. She didn't just become a symbol, she became a business asset. But Grace Kelly wasn't just decoration. She helped modernize the monarchy's public image, softening its aristocratic formality and making it more accessible. She engaged in philanthropy, founded cultural institutions, and raised her children not just as royals, but as public figures who could navigate both political responsibility and media spotlight. Each of them inherited her magnetism in different ways. Albert became the diplomatic statesman, balancing protocol with global climate initiatives. Caroline embraced high society and philanthropy. Stephanie became the rebellious spirit, crossing into pop culture and tabloid intrigue. Together, they kept the Grimaldi brand in circulation long after the camera lights faded from Grace herself. Her tragic death in 1982 didn't end her influence. It etched it deeper into Monaco's narrative. Grace became a legend, a lens through which Monaco would always be seen, and for Grimaldi dynasty, the legend remains one of its most profitable legacies. But behind the elegance and legacy lies a different kind of monarchy, one that mixes governance with ownership. In the boardrooms of palace overlooking the Mediterranean, Monaco is managed less like a kingdom and more like a holding company. And at the center of it all sits Prince Albert II, sovereign, environmentalist, investor, and brand to one of the world's wealthiest microstates. His title may be royal, but his methods are pure executive. Albert took the throne in 2005 after the death of his father Prince Rainier III and inherited not just a monarchy, but an empire built on land, secrecy, and prestige. Where Rainier brought stability and Grace Kelly brought global charm, Albert brought something else: operational focus. He didn't expand Monaco's footprint with fanfare. He expanded it with balance sheets and strategy decks. As head of state, he oversees every major aspect of Monaco's function: government decisions, budget allocations, real estate approvals, and international partnerships. But he also holds a unique dual role as the custodian of the monarchy's private wealth, often blurred with state interests. His reach spans state-led companies like SBM, infrastructure expansion, and diplomatic relationships with countries whose billionaires often find themselves buying into Monaco's lifestyle. Albert's vision for Monaco includes sustainability. He's launched projects like the Prince Albert II Foundation, which funds environmental initiatives, marine conservation, and renewable energy tech. That would seem idealistic, until you realize those same themes are also used to shape Monaco's brand in luxury real estate, positioning developments like Merterra as eco-luxury. In Monaco, green sells, and Albert knows how to monetize virtue as much as wealth. He's also highly active in international diplomacy, regularly appearing at climate summits, UN meetings, and royal functions. But those meetings aren't ceremonial. They serve Monaco's long game, to stay relevant, respected, and economically open without being politically vulnerable. Albert walks the line of sovereign and CEO, ensuring Monaco is attractive to investors but resistant to outside interference. Behind the scenes, the intertwining of personal and national wealth is rarely questioned. Real estate owned through royal linked trusts, oversight of national companies, and deep control over urban planning ensure that decisions beneficial to Monaco also tend to benefit the palace. Transparency is limited, dissent is rare, and with no elections for the throne, Albert operates with freedom that CEOs and politicians alike could only dream of. He's not flashy, and he avoids scandal like its toxic debt, but through cautious control, branding, and relentless protecting of Monaco's economic model, Albert has become something rare in today's world: a monarch who still manages profits and commands without ever needing to sell his product to voters or shareholders. But even billion-dollar monarchies have limits, and sometimes that power is tested. For all its polished marble, luxury yachts, and velvet diplomacy, Monaco remains a kingdom built on secrecy, and even as the House of Grimaldi isn't immune to the shadows behind the chandeliers, Prince Albert II, despite his calm demeanor and boardroom efficiency, has spent much of his reign navigating not just statecraft but scandal. In the early 2000s, the world discovered that Albert had fathered not one but two children out of a wedlock. Albert later publicly acknowledged both children, but not without pressure. The real issue wasn't personal reputation, it was constitutional. Monaco's strict succession laws once required that heirs be born in wedlock to be eligible for the throne. Had Albert later not married Princess Charlene and fathered legitimate twins, Monaco's royal future might have been legally unstable, especially given the state's unique tie between monarchy and governance. But questions of legitimacy weren't just about heirs, they extended to the core of how the palace operates. Over the years, investigative journalists and financial watchdogs have raised red flags about the blurry line between state assets and royal wealth. Monaco's finance laws, while improved, still offer vast discretion to the ruling family, and few in the principality are willing to challenge that status quo. The result is a kind of legal opacity where royal control, state revenue, and private fortunes seem to circulate within the same ecosystem, largely without scrutiny. There have also been privacy breaches and espionage allegations. In 2015, it was revealed that a former Monaco police chief had secretly recorded senior officials, including members of the palace, leading to one of the most public internal crises in decades. The scandal exposed tensions between Monaco's elite and its internal security apparatus, reminding the world that even paradise can carry surveillance and suspicion behind closed doors. On a broader level, the cost of development has brought its own backlash. Mega projects like Mer Terra and high-rise expansions have sparked growing concerns over rising inequality, limited space, and the environmental toll of artificially expanding the coastline. And then there are the growing calls for transparency. As the European Union tightens banking regulations and cracks down on opaque wealth havens, Monaco faces increasing pressure to conform. But unlike Luxembourg or Switzerland, Monaco isn't just a financial center, it's a monarchy. Changing the system doesn't just mean revising policy, it means redefining power, and that's a far more complicated prospect. Yet through all of it, the scandals, the scrutiny, and the secrecy, the Grimaldis remain. Their control hasn't weakened, it's simply evolved, refined over centuries to absorb crises and rebranded as resilience. Still, the Grimaldis endure, less like royals and more like CEOs with a crown. A country really be run like a family business? Or has Monaco become the ultimate proof that royalty and capitalism are just two sides of the same coin? Leave your thoughts in the comments.